Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Younger Body and Mind podcast. I'm Melissa Whitkey.
I'm Billy Greer.
Dr. Habib.
Good. And today we want to talk about an important subject. Diabetes is, something that we face much more often in society today. But we need a deeper understanding of how that happens. And I think one of the important concepts to understand is this idea of insulin resistance. So, Dr. Habib, can you tell us a little more for the layperson? What is insulin resistance?
I think it's a beautiful terminology because as we discuss it, you're going to understand how those words resonate. The first thing to say is that if you're a diabetic, you probably have insulin resistance. If you're not diabetic, you don't have to assume you have, let's say it differently. If you have insulin resistance, you may not be diabetic, but the problem may still be there. So insulin resistance is basically your own body's efficiency of utilizing your insulin. If you cannot utilize it, you're going to end up wasting it, and losing it for some people may end up where the pancreas doesn't have enough reserve. Then you're diagnosed with diabetes. However, just real quick, is that whilst the insulin levels are high, it's hard to lose weight.
And that's definitely something that people ask all the time. How do I lose weight? Why am I not losing weight? Some people really have given a lot of effort and say they have not been able to lose weight. Why is that?
Yeah. Well, so let's go back. High levels of insulin. When insulin is high, it tells the body to store fat. So you could be dieting and exercising, but if your insulin levels are high, and we'll talk about the reasons for it, then it may be almost near impossible to lose weight. Or if you lose weight, you might gain the weight back. And it's important to understand in context of insulin more about metabolism and what it does from a cell signaling point of view, meaning how it signals to other hormones. Because people always think about hormones being a possible cause of the weight problem, and it's not wrong, but it's not quite right, because the mother of all hormones is insulin. And that's why I say not everything insulin is diabetes. If you have insulin resistance, doesn't mean you're going to be diabetic, but there could be a whole bunch of problems. And not least that insulin resistance also leads to blood pressure. It leads to heart disease, dementia, and just like inflammation, it also accelerates aging, premature aging.
Well, with insulin resistance, how common is it? And is it something that we've seen increasing in the past decades?
Well, Billy, I'd like to be optimistic, but I've been a physician for over 30 years. I've been in America for over 25 years and seen thousands of clients. And recently we've been able to have access to more people where we insist on doing testing before we embark on any weight loss program or any health related program. And what we found is whether you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 50s, or your 60s and 70s even, not as many, it's almost like every other person has either inflammation or insulin resistance or both. Wow. That's how common it is.
How do you measure insulin resistance in the body?
Very simple. Two simple ways. I would say the simplest one is just a insulin level. So insulin levels, like first thing in the morning, you're fasting. You shouldn't have had breakfast. Shouldn't it be low?
In theory, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the simplest way. Just get a fasting insulin level in the morning.
So then, insulin resistance, and normally we think of insulin problems, everybody thinks, we need, to get insulin shots. So insulin resistance, are we looking at more higher than normal resistance? And what kind of problems does that cause?
Yep. So it's really at the level of the receptor. The receptor is not sensing something properly. So when we talk about the sugar issue, the sugar is not part of the insulin receptor. So the insulin receptor has to function properly, and then when the insulin hits it, it opens up a channel for sugar to enter the cell so you can burn it. It's important to understand that because for diabetics, that insulin resistance comes before the diabetes. When the sugar couldn't come in and gradually going higher is because it was waiting for the insulin and the receptor to work properly. But there was resistance. There was something like inflammation was damaging the receptor, and other things which are harmful to the body, like oxidation, is damaging. Toxicity, like we talked about gut at one point, things which are not healthy, which people know about, that's why it's so common. It's so common because just that statement, when you're not so healthy, which is a lot of people, it was me that at one point, because of the busy lifestyle, it affects insulin resistance. That's why it's so common. And it doesn't matter how old you are.
So let me ask you, so the sugar is obviously in our bloodstream, and it's there to enter into the cells so that it can provide energy and fuel the body. if it can't enter into the cells, where does it go? And is that where we cause inflammation?
It can, because sugar, high levels of sugar, refined sugar we're talking about here,
Right.
can turn on signals that turn on inflammation, just that alone. Sugar can alter your microbiome, so the balance of good and bad bacteria is off balance. That can send a signal to turn on inflammation. And so insulin resistance is quite common before people have diabetes. That's why you heard the term pre-diabetes. What does pre-diabetes mean? Well, it's just not bad enough. Sugar's not high enough, right? Do you really want to wait until it's bad enough, or do you want to know what comes before diabetes, called insulin resistance? And same with blood pressure. Do you really want to wait for borderline blood pressure? Borderline, I'm not even saying big blood pressure. When you know inflammation is, I just had to throw that in there. Because they go hand in hand. I mean, everyone wants to, pigeonhole
Body's
each
a
thing.
system, so
it's
right,
a system,
yeah,
exactly.
right.
And we're going to connect the systems to a degree. We just have to, but we're going to try to educate each simple thing. So the question again was, the sugar is building up, but when it's not high enough, we don't call it diabetes. And strictly speaking, with the hemoglobin A1C, which is like average sugar over 3 months, is between 5.7 and 6.4, we call it pre-diabetes. Not a very good terminology, because what if they don't become diabetic? I can sometimes be 5.9. I do something about it. I don't want to stay there, but it happens. How do you know unless you check?
Right.
So maybe that's a big point. I'm just saying, check your insulin level, have your doctor measure the fasting insulin level, which by the way, they don't do it, even though it's all over the literature. Everybody on peptides, the weight loss stuff, is that peptide for weight loss was for diabetics to begin with. Why? Because it helped with insulin resistance. That's why. Who's talking about that? Your doctor's not even telling you that half the time. So get the testing for insulin, and then check for inflammation as well. And insulin, so when the sugars are starting to creep up, it actually means that your cells are lacking fuel. That's even more horrendous and horrific. Because that's exactly what's going on in the brain. You may not be diabetic, but there's insulin resistance going on there. So some people call it type 3 diabetes. I just hate the word diabetes because it's telling a fact. It's not telling you the process. I have irritable bowel syndrome, which is incorrect. You have a dysbiosis, an imbalance of the bacteria. That's at least describing what the problem is. And the doctor should stop calling it irritable bowel syndrome, because it's not even a new diagnosis. Dysbiosis is the right diagnosis for that. It's when the insulin receptor is not working and the sugar can't get into the cell, irrespective of diabetes, you cannot have the metabolism. So the dementia patients have less metabolism in the cells of the neurons. They have less metabolism because of the insulin receptor. Lack of fuel getting in, can't get in, you don't have a good chance of metabolizing it. That's another layer of...
I think for then our listening audience too, to understand, okay, insulin resistance is not a good thing. Well, what causes it, and how can we prevent it or deal with it?
To keep it,
Yeah, because you said, I just want to build on the question, you said that insulin resistance is the root cause of metabolic disease. So we're talking, I think when people hear diabetes, that doesn't scare people enough today. I feel like we've normalized that word. To me, it's a very scary disease, but I think, that is, unfortunately, it seems to be chronic. It seems to be so many people have diabetes. I'm really shocked when I hear a lot of people telling me about it. But
And young people
Right,
too.
right.
The age has come younger and younger.
so
Yeah.
metabolic disease, root cause.
Yeah. Well, let's start with the physiological. What's physiological means what's supposed to be natural. In adolescence, naturally, teenagers are in a state of insulin resistance to gain the fat for the growth spurt.
Okay.
In pregnancy, that's why women gain weight. They're supposed to, so that they have the energy. So those are the only two physiological or natural times for insulin resistance. All other times are abnormal. And so the common causes are like inflammation. And the less common cause would be toxins. And the third most common cause is refined carbs. Right, we can get a little bit into the weeds, but we brought up inflammation in terms of being associated with heart attacks, crossing the blood-brain barrier, part of dementia, aging, affecting, cancer and so forth. So now inflammation has been associated with disrupting the receptor. So that's why the receptor doesn't work. is a state of resistance. So the body compensates by making more insulin to make it work. Like if it's not working, I'm going to make more. And so whether you eat or not eat, your body will make the insulin. It'll make it. And so also important to understand that you don't have to be diabetic to have an insulin resistance problem. But if you are diabetic and your insulin resistance is bad, it's going to be really hard to control. So the tragedy is when young people, 15, 16, 21, 22, still young, right? They are diagnosed newly as diabetic on pills and change your diet, it's your lifestyle, and rapidly, within sometimes months, but years, go into needing insulin because the doctors missed out at something that was immunological that destroyed the insulin receptor. This is at a higher level, but I think people understand a little bit of what I'm saying because it's happening. If you don't have it, you know somebody. I'm hearing it all the time, right?
I am too, and it's I think it's frightening.
Yeah.
But I want to touch on before it becomes this disease, because I think, it's just common sense says if the energy isn't getting into our cells, we're not feeling so good. We're feeling lousy. Do we have brain fog? Do we have low energy? What are the symptoms that we can detect in our body and we shouldn't normalize that can hopefully get us to prevent getting to this phase?
Well, that's easy because people are looking to their doctor to come up with this diagnosis called PCOS. Now, I bring it up because, women have ovaries, so that's half the population, I think. I don't know. I mean, a good wild guess, right? And it's not uncommon. So you don't have to have the disease. In fact, you don't even have to have cysts in the ovaries, but it's synonymous. What it's synonymous with is not being able to lose weight, pigmentation in the skin creases, the neck, armpits, and so forth. Acne, thinning hair, a disruption of the hormones, no periods, heavy periods, light periods, clotting, fibroids. I can't tell you the number of people that come to my office that the fibroid came back because the doctor treated it, but it came back. How did he treat it? He didn't cure it, right? That's why it came back, right? And then the acne, the antibiotic after antibiotic and cream and retinol after retinol and then sometimes oral antibiotics, because you're not dealing with the root. Now, I'm not simplifying that all acne is the same, but it's a combination of the gut and hormones, and then everything else is actually a smaller fraction, frankly. Am I so aggressive in front of the camera? Frankly means you can take that to the bank. Okay. And then, so what do we say about...
So we jumped to polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS, right? We were talking about that and as a cause of this insulin resistance.
Or can I say differently? I brought that up because the high insulin leads to the symptoms synonymous with PCOS. There is no PCOS, except there is. What that means that some people have the genetics for it, not that many. Okay. And some people have no genetics for it at all. They're kind of lucky. They can get away with more. And in between, you got a little bit of some of that genetics, which is a lot of people. So you don't have to have cysts, as I said, but all the symptoms I just said, I'm going to repeat it again. Weight gain, difficulty losing weight, pigmentation, not just in the skin creases, maybe it's a melasma and hyperpigmentation in the face, thinning hair. How many people? I mean, half the guys have thinning hair now who are like in their 20s. It's crazy. Just saying. Anyway, and then heavy periods, right? That's enough to drive my 3 daughters crazy. And they are crazy because one didn't have a period and another one's got headaches and so forth. All insulin resistance is what I'm trying to say. It's not just diseases. I'm a doctor, so I'm going to bring up the diseases because how am I going to cure it if I don't understand it?
Right.
And then, so people are on the right track in trying to understand it, but not the quick fix.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think with insulin resistance, again, people associate with diabetes, as a type 2, but I think people before clearly used to have this idea that, diabetes was genetic. And so you heard people saying, eating sugar, you're going to get diabetes. And people said, no, that can't happen. But this idea of sugar diabetes, now it's apparent that the diet can have this effect. So then the problem is if you've developed insulin resistance, is there a point where you're too far gone, damaged receptors, or it's not much you can do about it, or what is it that once we've identified this issue, that we have insulin resistance, what can we do to undo the damage, reverse the process?
The most important thing is that just a small group of people who have been diabetic for such a long time, where the reserves are so little that they're the only ones that you could say maybe they're a little far gone, but even they can stabilize the situation. For the majority, which should give you hope, majority, in fact, let me say it this way. You don't even have diabetes based on your blood, the doctor's blood work, until your reserves of your insulin in your pancreas is less than 50%.
Oh, okay.
If that's the case, then everything I'm saying is factual. If you've got 50%, and I said the severest one may have like 10% or 5%, and even then we can slow them down, that means that we can really support the people that are at that so-called prediabetes. But don't call it prediabetes based on the hemoglobin A1C alone. You have to look at the age and how many years they've been having these kind of issues. The bottom line would be this: it's not permanent. Let me go by the causes, then you'll know. If you have inflammation, you can get rid of it. Well, it's not permanent. If you have toxins, then you can get rid of it. It's not permanent. If you know that you're having lots of refined carbs, you could change it. Now, carbs do cause insulin resistance. So carbs don't necessarily cause diabetes, but refined carbs do cause insulin resistance, which makes which puts pressure on the pancreas. We call it beta cell exhaustion. Your pancreas is going to tire out, then you can get diabetes.
So you spoke about the pancreas having 50% or less. How is that measured?
Yeah, well, it's very difficult.
Okay.
The only researchers can tell you that. But what I'm trying to get to people's attention is that you can't wait for your doctor to diagnose the prediabetes, but it should be alarm bells. You may actually know, because I was fine until my mid-30s, which is very young, or 40s, whatever you want to say, where it's difficult to lose weight, where funny things are happening. It's not rocket science. It's so common. Didn't I start by saying that almost every other person has either inflammation or insulin resistance,
right,
or both? And this is the 20s and 30s and 40s. And so it's not like I've done a population study of 1 million people, but go ahead. You're only going to prove what I'm telling you.
Right.
And actually, NIH is doing that. I saw a postcard.
I think it's important too to distinguish. One of the things you said is refined carbs, because often people hear this kind of information and it just feeds into the idea of carbs are evil. And I think it's important for people to understand that, carbs are fuel for the body, an important fuel for the body. The problem comes from the refined carbs, which are assimilated by the body, completely differently, and can cause this problem.
Did you have something to say?
No, I was a follow-up question about how does insulin resistance attribute to early aging?
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Because that's,
each
here we are.
one I can spend. I don't want to forget that. So insulin resistance, well, let's just say it very simply. If you don't have the fuel in your cells and the cells don't work, then it's not going to bode well for aging. So I would say it's more of an association. Same with inflammation. It damages the tissues and cells and cell membranes, and we have measured. So it's an association. But we can talk about mechanism when we have a little bit more time. And so hopefully that is still a good segue to answering what we said here. We don't want to demonize carbohydrates, and we need fuel. But when it's in a box, or it's got a barcode, or it's packaged up, it's probably not natural. And so in the more natural form of the whole grain or the root vegetable, frankly, lentils and proteins have carbs as well. So you cannot get away from carbs. Your body will break it down because they all have the same structure. Fat and carbohydrates have the same chemicals, just slightly different lengths. That's all it is. We're the same chemicals. We, men, women, young, old, we're carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, I think. Yeah, there you go. CHO. It's and that's what it is when we're eating. It's about those chemicals that come into our body. We're just chemicals, and the chemicals are not chemicals. It's the electrical charge on the chemicals. So that's how the cell signaling works. That's the level we're trying to get to now. But doctors are stuck with, oh, you're pre-diabetic, you're borderline blood pressure, without even knowing the root cause, which is what we've just been saying: insulin resistance, inflammation, refined carbs, and toxins, which, that's another lecture. I mean, I think the public would understand toxins,
right,
but the medical world will say it's kind of complicated.
And when we were talking previously about inflammation and now with the insulin resistance, would you say that these are really lifestyle diseases?
Well, I mean, the answer is yes, but not a good lifestyle. I do a lifestyle, but I'm not sure I want that lifestyle. Let's be clear. I don't know about other people, but my health is not like this. Life is a little like this. It's sometimes out of your hands. You didn't get enough sleep, insulin resistance. You couldn't get the exercise, your muscles are not insulin sensitive, right? The one is insulin resistance, the opposite is insulin sensitivity. When sensitivity goes down, resistance may go up. Sometimes you're doing things to get insulin resistant and you're still exercising. So, there's two components. Life is all about balances, right? So the question was, the insulin resistance, that how common it is, and then just get my chain of thought back.
Right, would you describe it as a lifestyle disease? And I think one of the reasons we've seen it increasing.
Yep. I would just say life has become very refined. We're too busy. I mean, the joke is you park the car next to the gym so you don't have far to walk, right? That joke with the escalator. Right. They park the car and take the escalator up to the gym, right?
Right. Get on the treadmill.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're just contradictions right here, right? So it is lifestyle, but it's a little bit insidious because the economic industry complex is kind of got us wrapped up with the food that they provide for us. Now the sugar industry will educate us about healthy sugars. I wouldn't want to take their advice. I mean, for a little bit on the TV, it's got stevia in it. I bet you they won't have that in their product for now until they have no choice or something. Allulose, great kind of sugar substitute that can actually bring down insulin resistance, 0 calories, right? I don't get any money in saying that, by the way. I wish I did. So I would say it is lifestyle. And but I don't think sometimes people have a good lifestyle and still fall into that trouble because they didn't sleep enough. They couldn't exercise enough. What else?
So we're back to food, exercise, and sleep, right? Are the primary things that we really need to focus on.
And you don't have to do like a ton of it. Just regularity will always beat the infrequent indulgence of those activities.
Okay. So one of the things I was thinking when you were talking before is there's arguments all the time about what diet should I be eating, low carb, no carb, high fat, carbs, it's crazy. And most people have no idea where to start. I mean, I think, the body needs carbohydrates, it needs fat, it needs protein. What do we tell people who are so confused by all of the information that's out there? Because they want this. They probably don't want insulin resistance. They don't want inflammation. They want to prevent disease. The majority of people, if they're listening to all of us, they're with us in this, in this exploration. So what do we tell them?
More specific,
right.
Too, since we are talking about insulin resistance, what is the type of diet that will help reduce insulin resistance?
Everything you guys said is perfect, but I want to just start by saying that if you have a diet that works for you, just keep it. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that whatever diet it is, over time it won't work because you will change. Right. So now let's answer that question. So if you have a pre-diabetic problem or an insulin resistance problem, you probably want to do a low-carb diet, right? Or maybe a keto diet. And so what I would say is that, and maybe even a carnivore diet, but you just have to see the value of it for that moment in time and then see how you change over time. Because if you have a diet that is keto, which I think is not a bad state to be in ketosis, but I don't do ketosis by having a keto diet. I stay in ketosis by doing intermittent fasting. Right. So let me elaborate on that one just so that people can feel comfortable at least in getting the information to make the right judgment. So there's no diet that's bad. There's a type of diet that might be useful for that time and place. And we can spend actually one episode on that. I think it'll be a fantastic one because it's very practical. And no matter what diet that's good, it can't stay good forever, but except for a balanced diet. Right? So that's another one. Is there such thing as a balanced diet? I don't know anyone selling a balanced diet. Maybe I should sell a balanced diet.
I think we should.
Because, you got the Atkins diet.
That's what people are asking. I think that was where the basis of my question was, how much carb, fat.
People want to go to big
protein,
extremes.
right?
There's carbs are bad, so no carbs.
But we want those root vegetables. We want potatoes. We want.
And sometimes on social media say I just only had potatoes all month, and I don't doubt it. I said great, but how are you going to get how are you going to get the microbes doing the right talking and communication because the microbes are involved.
Right.
The microbes are involved with inflammation. The microbes are involved with insulin resistance. The microbes are involved with toxic fat. That's a type of toxin. In fact, let me tell the audience something really, really important. You don't even have to be exposed to a toxin. The metabolites, that means the things that break down from you eating carbs. I don't want to pick on carbs. Even the keto people, I like to be instead of ketosis. Ketones have to be broken down into a intermediate compound, and just to sound smart, it's called methyl glyoxyl. Okay. It's toxic, and your glutathione can get rid of it. But what if you used up your glutathione? What if genetically you don't have glutathione? It's an antioxidant. People should have heard about it. It's great for the liver. The liver makes it. Every cell needs it. 100% true. Every cell, red cell, mitochondria cell, cells with no mitochondria. So my point is that you don't even have to be exposed to a toxin. You don't even have to consume a whole bunch of dirty diet. Just a normal metabolic process. But I don't want people to think that stop eating, but maybe eating less is the answer, which is true actually.
Right.
Low caloric diet is the only diet, low caloric, that's it. That you can eat whatever you want, carnivore diet, whatever. Low caloric diet is the only diet that has been proven to reduce all diseases, and those people live longer. We're talking about longevity, right? Don't get inflammation, don't get insulin resistance, you'll live longer. One is eat a little less, and eat less frequently potentially. So why do I bring that? Because we can argue all day long. There just isn't enough data. Data means it takes decades. This conversation just started with the biohacking and so forth, 5 or 10 years maybe a little longer for some people. They're not a long time. And all these drugs and stuff, they've not been here a long time. I, as a physician, want to know what's the consequence 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh,
and so that's why it's not appropriate for even me to be too gung-ho, because we don't know a lot of things. But what we do know is studies on the low caloric community. They reduce their caloric intake as a whole, not from any one type, as a whole by 30%.
No, so we always benefit from eating less.
Yeah, but the problem is that you and I would be really miserable, would be like very hangry. Because that's deprivation.
How did you know I get hangry?
I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm always angry.
I just recently discovered that there is a genetic marker for having a propensity to becoming hangry.
Yeah, is that right?
My wife happens to have that marker.
No, you lie. And
So we have to keep.
But let me tell you about being hungry. It's a good state to be in. But I'm not saying you got to jump into it right away. But you might want to embrace it, because it depends on the personality. If I think something is good for me, I kind of end up liking it. So when you're hungry, you're releasing ghrelin. Ghrelin is a growth hormone. It tells the brain, you're hungry, eat, but you're resisting. And hopefully the hunger will go down a little bit. And so the time feeding is phenomenal, because you can the research is telling us, but not confirming yet, because you have to wait 30 years. Good luck. But in the meantime, it's telling you it can match the caloric restrictors, the miserable people who don't smile. They look actually quite miserable because they're skinny and emaciated, right? With the time feeding, and I'm not, I'm just fat. The time feeding is the best of both worlds, right? Which is like, I'm not going to put anything in. I'm going to let my hunger come. I want my growth hormone. Don't inject me. Get my own, right? Because when you don't eat, you can break down the glycogen stores, and you're going to get insulin sensitive, because these are the things that are stopping your insulin being sensitive in the muscles, because you've got too much glycogen stores in there. This is what's stopping the liver from being insulin sensitive, because you've got too much fat and glycogen stores in there. They're there for a reason, but you got too much of it. You never brought it down. So time feeding may give you a chance, meaning that we have to figure out your threshold. You guys are super healthy. And so time feeding is where you're not eating, you're letting the stores come out. You're never going to become hypoglycemic. You're getting all these growth factors, and then when you break your fast, you can eat whatever you want, and you get the growth signals coming back. But don't start off by eating refined carbs.
Okay.
You start off with eating fats, because then the surge of insulin won't be as rapid. I mean, insulin is a growth hormone, so we will get it. We'll get it. Once you eat, you will make some insulin, no doubt.
So one of the things that I feel that happens in my body is the more I've focused on listening to my body, the more it guides me in what it wants. And I feel like we've lost that ability in this culture, where we have the sensitivity to what our body's asking for. I can tell when I feel dehydrated. I can tell when I need protein. My body tells me what it wants. Now, not always, and I'm not always listening, and I kind of ignore it at times. The stress, but can we get back to that? I think you and I have had that conversation.
And I think part of it, though, is people use an excuse now. They talk about intuitive eating. As my body tells me what I want. I want that, brownie. I want that chocolate cake.
My body,
and it's too easy to let appetite, which is a stronger feeling. Because I noticed the same thing in my youth in high school and college. I was a wrestler, so I had to control my diet. And so I, first of all, a little bit caloric restriction, but there was much more awareness. And I had days where I just craved carbs. That's what I wanted. And then another day, not so much. And so you can, I think, you're become aware of what your body needs. But the trap to fall into is to
attributing bad lifestyle choices.
How to distinguish between the feeling of what your body needs and what your mind wants, appetite.
But I don't crave those things. Like when I say I'm listening to my body, it's usually a protein. It's usually I feel dehydrated. It's usually, okay, did I have enough salt, or, what is, I'm very in tune.
You're unique of being able to resist temptation.
I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, and I was saying that both of you give a great perspective of the different sides, and maybe for a change, I'll come in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And the mid-ground. So first of all, for the audience who are listening, for most people, it may not be a good idea to jump into feeling hungry if they're not used to it, because hunger, I think that's what it was part of the feeling. It always wins, and people will probably make the wrong choices. We're talking about people that can gradually build up to it. Exactly.
Yeah. But I would say a slight hunger, I feel more alert.
Me too.
More focused.
I agree with you.
You have that slight feeling of hunger. So not the ravenous, and not
kill someone.
not hangry. But there is something which stands to reason. If you think about so many of our systems, I think were designed for a time that we don't live in anymore. And so it made sense that if you were hungry, it was more important to be able to find food. So you're going to be more alert to what's around you, to notice things, maybe a little quicker, if to catch an animal, and so there were positive benefits to that. And now we live in a time where food is so readily available that we're driven more by the appetite of what we want rather than what we need.
Well, the observation that I've made is that when I'm a little bit hungry, I really enjoy the food a lot. If I'm not hungry, I'm not enjoying the food. So if I try to explain that on a medical terminology, would be maybe the receptors are more responsive to a state where I haven't eaten and I'm a little hungry, and that's why I can enjoy that food. It's just a maybe. No control study. I think it's all about moderation, and the truth is a bit of everything, and that's why I think what we're doing is helping people kind of figure things out. And I don't know about you, but whatever I knew in my 30s was nothing compared to now, and whatever I knew in my 40s. So really, it's a journey, and this is what it is, and why not be in tune with your body, because it'll help you. And then what we had said earlier was, if we can get some metrics, then that will help you understand if you're in tune.
Right. So we're coming to a close, and we are here to talk about insulin resistance. I think we've covered that well, but what do we want to leave our listeners with? Positive steps they can take today or tomorrow to help them on the path to changing insulin resistance, avoiding insulin resistance, and hopefully having a healthier lifespan.
Yeah. Well, it's very simple. From a consumer point of view, refined carbs has been documented to cause insulin resistance. So things in packages and boxes, and everyone knows what that is. Just reduce it a little bit. There are other concepts which are a little bit hard, but I think it needs to be in the dialogue, because it can help a lot of people by asking the doctor to check for the inflammation marker, right? That's as simple as that. If you don't have it, it's good, but for people who want to go find out, there's other layers. Then get your doctor to measure the fasting insulin level. If it's high, you have insulin resistance. Even if they don't know what it is, you can go and find out what it is, because it's probably at the root of why you're not getting what you want. You're not achieving the goals you want. That's it. It's worth your while.
Great. And so I think one of the things, the takeaways for me is, one of the things people ask me about what I'm eating as many single ingredient foods as I can. You know, it's vegetables, fruits, you know, whatever, grains as they are, meats. So, you know, that seems to be a good starting place for my diet. Bill, final words?
Well, I was just going to say, I can't remember who it was, but I remember learning a quote in Latin that basically said that we should eat to live, not live to eat. Okay. And, you know, that's an important concept, I think, for people to understand, that food is medicine. You know, so we should eat well to keep our bodies healthy.
All right, was it Steve Jobs who said, eat your food as medicine or medicine will become your food?
That's right.
I believe it was him at the end of his life.
Well, he has to put his brand on it, doesn't he? He just has to. But it's correct.
Dr. Habib, final words.
Final words. Look, a balanced lifestyle, make a little change, the one that makes sense for you. Whatever makes sense for you may be different to somebody else, but that little change is the way to go.
Thank you for joining us today on this episode of Younger Body and Mind podcast. If you'd like more information on Dr. Habib's practice, you can visit him on nexthealthmed.com. You can visit his practices in person in Ashburn, Virginia, or Bethesda, Maryland. And as always, come back, subscribe to our channel, and we'll look forward to next time.
Bye-bye, everyone.